If everybody's good, since it is 4 o'clock, I will call to order the Board of Selectmen meeting for Tuesday, February 10th. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, great. All right, thank you. So I think terms of for selectmen's updates, I guess just one highlight for the public's benefit is the Board of Selectmen did vote on a recommended budget for 2026, 2027. And we will be doing a full presentation at the budget public hearing, which is scheduled for why don't I have that date handy?
February 23rd, I believe.
Yeah, the 23rd. That's right. At 6 o'clock is the budget public hearing. That'll walk through everything. I just want to thank the board, obviously, for working collegially to get this through, and also for the town staff and all the assistants, especially the finance department, and pulling this together. Just to highlight, the operational budget of the recommended selectmen budget is 2.46% over the previous year. Obviously, we're continuing to see additional debt service come on to the town as we move forward with our referendum-related projects. And so that's caused an increase in the capital budget of about 4%. So the overall town of Madison budget is for recommended is 2.81% increase over the previous year. So I just want to highlight that. There'll be a lot of information about what's backing that up. But that will be further discussion as we go through the budget approval process. So stay tuned. And there's a calendar online that shows you when all the key dates are for the public, as well as the actual voting date, which is going to be the last Tuesday in April this year. For the first time, we'll be voting in April. Also, just want to highlight that tomorrow night is the State of the Town presentation at 7 o'clock. And it's in the Hammond Asset Room, I think, here at Town Hall, as well as will be available online as for live streaming if you want to watch it that way or video. And basically, this is required by our charter. Just like the governor last week gave his state of the state address, I give a state of the town, which just kind of walks through everything that's going on in Madison and kind of where we are on certain things. And it also highlights our capital plan, which is required by the town charter. And there'll be a couple pages just discussing that. That's also really going part of the budgeting process. So a deeper dive in the budgeting process. This is just kind of a high level overview. So that is my update, and turn it over to selectmen comments.
The Madison 200 committee has been actively at work and have developed a number of activities which will be taking place during this calendar year to celebrate both Madison's 200th anniversary as a town, as well as the United States celebration of 250 years. And on the town website is an ever more extensive calendar of all of the events which this committee will be coordinating and co-branding during the coming year. So I would encourage people to have a look at the calendar for the Madison 200 committee. It includes activities every month this year, not just during the summer, but every month during this calendar year.
And I'll highlight that I think by tomorrow evening, the website will go live because she's been really populating a lot of new information from the committee. So it should be all up to date and go live, I think, by tomorrow night. So just want to highlight that also. So stay tuned till maybe Friday, then check the website. So there's some information there, but it's not fully loaded up yet. Any other comments?
I have a quick update from our Board of Trustees at the Scranton Memorial Library, if I could. So from a fundraising standpoint, the most recent event, a novel pairing, an exclusive event for book lovers, was sold out success, raising almost $4,000. The feedback has been extremely positive, so a repeat of this event with a summer reads theme is being planned for the spring. The annual Heart of Madison raffle begins Saturday, February 7th. So tickets are already online and being sold. And the Super Bowl is on February 21st. I'm actually one of the judges. Jen, I think you're a judge too, right? This year? Is that
I
what I heard?
sure am.
You and I, nice. We get to taste some goodies out there. Um, some policy updates from the library. So progress continues in various finance policies with the new strategic plan, the Board of Trustees annual self-evaluations and subsequent gap analysis will be completed this month. And then some good news to share, sort of following on Al's update, as a part of the Madison 200 America 250 celebration, the library will participate in multiple ways, including a launch of a podcast titled Madison Memories. The podcast will feature individuals with significant memories of or connections to Madison. A high school student will assist with production, and the podcast will be hosted on the library's website. And that is the update.
Great, thank you. Jen or Al?
The only thing I'll add is the senior center. They are currently in the process of scheduling appointments with tax advisors for the free AARP tax appointments for any seniors in town that are interested in taking advantage of that. Appointments can now be scheduled.
Great service, that is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. And Al, did you have any updates? No? Okay. All right, great. We'll move on then from that. We'll move on to item number 5, citizens' comments.
There's one.
Looks like we have a hand raised. Yep. State your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Alex Province of 917 Boston Post Road. I'm speaking today about public participation, not about a single project. Last year, this board adopted new norms limiting public comment to 2 minutes and discouraging residents from naming town employees. At the time, I cautioned that this could chill free speech and narrow the range of voices you hear. I was told these were suggestions, not hard rules. During the seawall discussions, it often felt otherwise. A resident asking good faith questions was interrupted, cut off at 2 minutes, and removed from Zoom. Some were publicly characterized as unreasonable. That approach did not build trust. Everyone on this board chose to run for office. You campaigned for these seats, knowing Madison is a town of many perspectives, not one viewpoint, not one agenda, and not one way of thinking. With that choice comes a responsibility to represent all of us, including those who you disagree with. Pushing through outcomes rather than listening deeply to residents may win a moment, but it erodes the relationship between government and the people it serves. Strong towns do not fear criticism, they welcome it, even when it's messy, imperfect, or inconvenient. Democracy is not only for the polished or the politically connected, it belongs to everyone who shows up. As someone who cares deeply about Madison, I want our board to model patience, openness, and respect for residents who take the time to engage. So I respectfully ask you to treat time limits as flexible, not punitive. Avoid cutting people off mid-sentence. Remember that disagreement is not disrespect. Listening is leadership. Thank you for your service and thank you for hearing me today.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other hands raised?
I do
No?
not see any. No.
Okay. Moving on to item number 6. I'd like to get a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Moved.
Got a second? Okay. Any comments or questions? No? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Any nays or abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Jen will abstain from the consent agenda. All right, thank you. Moving on to item number 7. Discuss and take action to recommend the 2026-2027 Board of Education budget. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second? Okay, great. So we had our workshop last week. We went through our budget. We talked about CIP. We took kind of formal action on those. And we didn't do anything on the Board of Education budget. We were kind of there's a little confusion about we don't have any authority to impact the Board of Education budget. It's really the Board of Finance that does. But every year we have actually made a recommendation. I went back and checked that. So I know at our workshop we were like, are we supposed to vote to recommend or not? And we didn't take action just more for time's sake. So we agreed to put it on the agenda. I did look into it. We did vote on it last year. So with that, I'm very comfortable supporting. We had a great presentation by Dr. Cook. I know that the numbers this year are challenging for the Board of Ed, just as it is for the town because of the issue with the healthcare increases that are occurring in the town budget. And so I think they did a really thorough job. They kept it down to kind of basic programming. There's not a lot of new things in this budget. I think it's really just trying to sustain the personnel costs, which make up 70% of the budget. So I'm comfortable moving forward with a recommendation, at least for the Board of Ed budget that was presented to us on January 30th. Any comments or other board member comments? No? Okay, so I guess with that, I know we did talk about this before, but just wanted to bring it up as a formal action item. With that, then all in favor of recommending the 2026-27 Board of Education budget presented to us last week, say aye. Aye. Okay, great. All right, so with that, we'll move on to
We're
item
making
number
progress
8.
here. Look at all these
Yeah.
things we're getting done. Wow. Just saying.
Item number 8 is discuss establishing a community emergency response team, which is a CERT team. And CERT is the nickname for this. I want to welcome Ryan Duquesne up to talk about this. And basically, this is a volunteer team that would assist the town in terms of any kind of emergency actions that happen, whether it's a major weather event or some other public emergency. I found over the years we've been through some hurricane situations and storm events where we have a shelter now that we're going to be opening up this year, a much better emergency shelter than what we currently have. And we've always kind of been really bumped into staffing issues about who's going to be at the shelter, what assistance we could provide residents. And so creating one of these teams is something that would actually help the town out a lot in terms of these emergency things. And there's other things that could happen, this team could be used for as well. And Ryan kindly, volunteered to kind of start doing this from an organizational standpoint. It is a lot of heavy lifting. And Ryan, if you want to talk a little bit more, I know you have a presentation, and then also kind of came out of his interest in establishing a drone program here in town, and this kind of evolved into the CERT conversation. So with that, I will turn it over to Ryan.
And where do you find the time for all this stuff?
This is my AI avatar speaking. That's the only way. Thanks, Peggy, and in hoping to meet Scott's expectations of a brief meeting, I will be concise, but certainly this is a conversation, hopefully, that we'll continue to have over a period of time. And before I pull up the presentation too, I just wanted to thank Peggy, as well as Sam DeBurra and Greg Carroll, for sitting down with me on several occasions over the fall as I was ideating a few of these technology and resource related ideas that I have to serve the town. And through those conversations, I started to share an initiative that I think helps to meet some of the needs that Peggy just outlined in relation to staffing our new emergency shelter, as well as utilizing technology to help in response to certain types of emergencies that our community has. And in doing some of that research, I looked just recently in Tolland, actually, a drone was used to locate a missing person in the woods in just a few minutes, accomplishing what would have taken officers on the ground probably many hours. In New Jersey, departments up and down the shore, as well as in lakes areas and river areas, are using drones for water and ice related rescues. Um, and to Peggy's point, during Hurricane Helene in the Carolinas, it was trained CERT teams that stepped up to staff all of their emergency shelters, which allowed the first responders, of course, to stay on the front lines helping those that are in need. So this afternoon, I'm excited to share a little bit of the research that we've done on establishing this. And my only ask at the end will be to continue the investigation into what's needed to set one of these teams up here in Madison. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick. Apparently, I have to give access.
Can you're able to share?
I think so.
Yeah, because I know Jeannie's on, so if there's a problem.
If we need to. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, great. Excellent. So I really wanted to just share a proposal that outlines what it would be to establish a Madison CERT team, which stands for Community Emergency Response Team. And for me, that word community is just so critical to what it is that we're hoping to accomplish, or what I would imagine we could accomplish with this. It is community members coming together and helping the town as a force multiplier during times of need, when our first responders, our volunteers, or our sworn officers are kind of too thin due to certain emergencies. This trained community group would come together. Just as a quick note, for those of you that looked at the presentation as a pre-read, there are images. These are for illustrative purposes only. Having spent some time, and I know Scott and Al will probably attest to this, in corporate, always got to make sure I get my disclaimers in there. So a CERT team, it's not a service club. It's a disciplined auxiliary unit that's actually authorized under the state of Connecticut statute Title 28. It operates strictly under Madison's Office of Emergency Management. And this team really serves as a force multiplier. It's surging manpower to support police, fire, even EMS, specifically when their resources are stretched thin. The state of Connecticut actually backs these organizations, and these are not new. They actually came out of the original civil defense and civil preparedness organizations, and they've matured under these community emergency response teams. Crucially, under Title 28, members when they are activated are actually designated as state agents. And what this means is that the state of Connecticut is actually providing the liability protection for these members, as well as workers' comp. So there's no additional strain on municipal insurance resources. There's no additional liability to the town underneath this state sanctioned program. So Madison CERT, unlike maybe some of the generic programs that are out there, or some of the more traditional programs, this unit would really have a specific dual track mission. So we would train volunteers. The Red Cross has several great programs that actually certify people in shelter operations so that they could staff the new Brown School emergency shelter during storms. And then in addition to that, as Peggy alluded to, we would create a drone aviation unit of FAA licensed drone pilots that would be trained in search and rescue and storm assessment programs to start. And again, these would be providing new and critical capabilities to the town at zero labor cost. Additionally, too, even though drones provide some pretty amazing new technology to emergency response, they're relatively low cost. And we believe that through perhaps a partnership with the Madison Foundation or another group, we could actually attract funding, private funding to fund those technologies pretty easily. The standards for CERT teams are actually pretty well established. So we've done some preliminary, thinking on what the designs could be. It would be a visual identity that integrates into Madison's existing public safety standards. For example, using the town seal. But specifically, we're using CERT green, which is the color that CERT identifies with on a national scale, to ensure that the volunteers are clearly identifiable as town assets, but avoiding any confusion with sworn officers or EMS or fire. So we talked a little bit about what the ask would be here, and in talking to Peggy and Sam and Greg and Bobby, we know that there's a lot of priorities that this town has, and we know that our volunteers and our town staff are already stretched thin. And so we thought that the best approach to this would be a phased approach to determine, number one, do the research necessary to figure out what are the demands of this program on our community, and how could we establish one in the most efficient and effective way. And so, as Peggy alluded to, I've taken on that responsibility so far, and I'm happy to continue doing that to figure out exactly what we need to do to establish this as a volunteer entity underneath the town's Office of Emergency Management. But in addition to that, and I kind of credit Sam to this thinking ahead a little bit, is to determine what is the community's desirability to volunteer for a program like this. It's wonderful to imagine, and you might be able to see in this masked image there, we have some volunteers. I know all of you are definitely going to step up and volunteer right away, so I've already kind of created
Our free time.
a pseudo image there. Yeah, Scott, you especially, I know, me number one. But we want to ensure that that we do have a number of volunteers that will commit to this program, even if the lift is, somewhat light. We do know that there's going to be training involved, and we know that if called upon, these volunteers have to be ready to serve. So we want to ensure that that's the case. So my ask would be that that there is a permission granted to approach the service organizations and other citizens of our town to determine if they would be willing to serve. And then to come back to you as a Board of Selectmen to ask for a go, no-go based upon the research that's done on what it takes to establish this program, as well as what the roster looks like of volunteers. So that's it. Scott, how do you like, I don't know exactly what I did on time, Scott, but I think I was pretty good.
Man, you nailed it. That was fantastic. So I do have a question, since you batoned me quickly.
Yes.
So are there examples of towns, maybe even on the shoreline, that are doing this already, Ryan? And how are they sort of handling it from a cost standpoint and all of that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes, there actually are. I think there's over 60 CERT programs already in Connecticut. So,
Wow.
in terms of their, presence in communities, I mean, they're pretty widely used. They really run the gamut. I was looking at the program in Orange, for example. I know Russ Pearson at the ambulance, one of our ambulance employees, lives in Orange and was a member of the fire department there. They're very closely connected to the fire department, and they actually will support the fire department in any time, I think, where there's multiple alarms. They'll set up canteen. They'll make sure that if there's assistance required with, helping with traffic control or, things along those lines. They up in the northern part of the state around Hartford, they're very, very common. So they've been around for a while, and again, they're used as force multipliers. putting the drone program underneath CERT is something that's, I would say newer within the last, maybe 5 or 10 years. And again, because of the structure and the reduction in liability, it allows for those programs to fit nicely in there. And in terms of our specific community, it also mitigates the distraction factor of setting up an entirely new technology in a volunteer organization like a fire department, for example.
Maybe just one more while I have you. What's been the reaction from these 60 plus towns relative to, the community involvement? It could be perceived potentially as community policing, and extending that to maybe our police force. Have you had conversations with Jack and the team and others to how that might work?
Yeah, well, I can't speak to any specific information yet from the towns because I wanted to make sure we had this conversation before I, went out and spoke to other communities. However, in the reading that I've done, and in certainly in understanding how these programs are structured, they are not structured to be auxiliary policemen or police people. They're not set up to be fire people. They're really, force multipliers and use, for example, I think one of the images there, you can get these folks chainsaw certified by the state. So, if we have another, storm, whether it's a hurricane or an ice storm, these folks can assist with our fire departments or Department of Public Work in helping to clear debris. Additionally, even on fire scenes, I mean, the examples that I've seen where these folks are actually assisting in fire, it's usually brush fires or other types of, fires where there's basic firefighting occurring, never like a structure fire or an accident scene or something along those lines.
And I think keep in mind that, a lot of towns have career fire departments, so they have staff always in the firehouse during emergency situations. And so that's how they kind of oftentimes lean on that during emergency situations because they're already paying to have people in the firehouse department, houses and things like that. We're all volunteer. So we don't have that kind of consistent staffing during major events. And so I think this kind of gives us an extra buffer to tap into for things that aren't like specialty needs. Maybe you can get people certified in chainsaws, but like once again, I use the example of, or a good example is the warming shelters that we offer. The governor, when he puts in his I forget what it's called, but he puts in basically a cold weather activation, and we need to have a place for people to go if they're having problems staying warm, right? And so, we're right now using, senior center staff, people who might want extra hours. We try to offer extended hours to like 8 o'clock or things like that, so that somebody does have a place to go if they're having problems with their heating system or maybe just energy. They're tight on funds and can't necessarily get their oil tank filled in time. They have a place to go. But rather than having to staff that with, and sometimes we can't get people to work these shifts, we could rely on a CERT team as a volunteer group that could come in and sit at the senior center. And same with some of the shelters. So I think there's, a lot of opportunities, and actually we do have Sam DeBurra, our emergency management director, who is, I think now on. So maybe he could just weigh in for a few minutes about the advantages of this. And I know he's had the opportunity to work in Hamden, I think, with a CERT team than when he was working in Hamden. So, Sam.
Yeah, I'm here. So the CERT team is valuable. It's, as Ryan said, it's a force multiplier. It's a very supportive role. Hamden has a pretty robust one. They probably have about 30 individuals that are on their CERT team. They get deployed for when they do their summer concerts and stuff like that. They set up water stations and cooling stations depending on the weather. They do man the shelters. They have a couple different shelters in Hamden, so they do man the shelters there. And then, but there is some training involved. There's about 20 hours of basic training to begin with, and then the specialized stuff if you want to get into cutting trees, which I kind of don't recommend. But because that's really kind of a specialized skill. You can get hurt very easily if you don't know what you're doing with those. And then, obviously the shelter stuff is a little bit extra. Um, so it is a big time commitment, and you have to, kind of drill probably once a month or have meetings and stuff like that. So to keep the interest and to keep everybody up to speed what's going on, I did explain to Ryan it's bad timing right now. It just we don't have the bandwidth, and that's why he's kind of taking the lead on this to try to get things set up and see if there's an interest out there. But it could be a very valuable asset to the town if there's people interested.
Is there? I just Hamden obviously is a much bigger community than Madison. Does it tend to benefit more with the larger communities as opposed to maybe the smaller ones, or does it not matter?
So I don't think it matters. Killingworth has one.
Oh, they
They
do.
seem to be
Okay.
doing pretty well with it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Is
I
there-
think we're fortunate too because we have a lot of people in town who are trained medical professionals. Not that we're asking them to do that kind of work, but we have a lot of people that have good skills that could be applied to this. So, Jen, I'm sorry I interrupted
Oh,
you.
that's okay. I was just going to ask, is there any special type of insurance or anything like that that we need to
Question.
carry to run a program like this?
My understanding, Jen, is that the most important and the critical elements of insurance, liability and workers' comp, are actually covered under the state umbrella, under this Title 28. However, that is one of the pieces we'd want to make sure that we investigate fully between now and the next time I would come back to you all.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I
Ryan,
shared an
go ahead. Go ahead, Al.
I shared an anecdote with Ryan the other day, which I'd like to share with the selectmen now. But many years ago, during one of the hurricanes that Madison experienced, the selectmen set up some water stations, and the one up in North Madison was the volunteers for that water station were the Board of Selectmen. And we took turns not only distributing water, but helping to distribute information. This was in the days before perhaps we had other channels of communication. And so I think it was a very valuable service to the community in terms of seeing some volunteers out and recognizing that our emergency service personnel were otherwise occupied.
Al, I think that's a great story because it really does illustrate the fact that in a community like ours, we have people that are willing to step up, but we don't necessarily have the organization in place that if something were to happen next week, how quickly could we mobilize all these interested people to make sure that people have water, to do wellness checks, to clear debris, even if it's not using a chainsaw, Sam. So I think that's exactly, where a program like this, where it provides that organizational element so that when these members who are willing to step up are needed, we have a way to deploy them.
Yeah, I mean, I think this could be a win-win. We just have to see what people start. I mean, we have a town that obviously people love to volunteer. I mean, look at our two fire departments, and we have a lot of great volunteer organizations. And so I think this might just be, an opportunity for people to find another way to serve. So I guess, Ryan, then is your thinking is if we're all kind of supportive of moving forward with this, you would basically put kind of like a I guess like a recruiting kind of deck together, and then we'd also get some of these questions answered, and maybe then once we're good with that, that's when we'd actually actively go out and see who would be interested.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we'd want to, I would, ask people to indicate their interest in serving. So, not formally recruit them, but indicate their interest by sharing, kind of a brief overview of what the program would do. I think modeling that after other communities like Hamden, North Haven, Killingworth, to determine, how they explain the program, would make a lot of sense. And then while that's happening, I'll, continue to get the details of the program. Perhaps, if you all one-on-one want to reach out, and if you have additional questions of things you think we need to know, we'll do that. I'll certainly, Peggy, work with you to make sure we get any answers surrounding insurance and other financial aspects. And then I would ask that I could come back to you all either in May or June with those findings.
Great.
Works for me. Sam,
Yeah,
you good with
sounds
that?
good. Yep.
Yeah, that's fine. It'd be nice to see Scott in green.
I
Here.
zoom in on I'll share some pictures with you, Sam.
Yeah, I saw them all 5 of them were up there in the green. Looked pretty
Yeah,
good.
they were.
I was actually expecting him to use like pictures of us doing it too.
I
So.
know.
That was great. That had to have been the picture from the ribbon cutting at the schools.
I think it might have been. I don't know.
Hey,
Illustrative
Ryan,
purposes only.
there
Illustrative
you go.
purposes
I
only.
thought it was great. I like the chainsaw, and I have a steel chainsaw, so I like that. Ryan, just maybe one last follow-up, if I may. I sort of alluded to it, and I see Captain Harkins was on. I don't know if he's still there or not, but what is or is not the connection to the police department from an emergency standpoint, or is it mostly through Sam's organization that CERT tends to align? How does that sort of connectivity inside the town work?
Yeah, well, traditionally, and Sam can certainly speak to this more, but traditionally, from what I've seen, these organizations are all under the Office of Emergency Management in the town because of the way that they report up through the state. But certainly, the close connectivity to the fire departments, the police department, and I have had some conversations with Chief Drum, who I believe is supportive of this effort, as well as EMS even. And I've had some conversations with Russ Pearson as well. But Sam, I don't know if you have any additional details.
Yeah, so basically, like Ryan indicated, it's all through Demis, through the state's Demis, because that's where they get the authority from. But we could set up parameters on how they get activated, what events they automatically get activations for. But I would think that like the 4th of July, a lot of the town events and the parades and the concert and all that stuff, they'd probably be very helpful doing all that stuff. It's not just for emergency stuff as well. It could be, for any event, realistically, any big event. So, I mean, they are an asset. You just have to get them trained properly and organize them properly. And,
if I may, the police department is in full support of the team. We could certainly use the volunteers for a lot, like what Sam was saying in regards to special events such as the fireworks, parades, road races. We're always looking for volunteers. So
Little League parades.
So we're looking forward to it, and the drone capability. That's something definitely we would be interested in exploring. Yeah, so we're in favor. Thank you.
Thanks, Captain Harkins.
Right. So I think there's lots of opportunities for this. And we'll take it to the next step.
Awesome, Ryan. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks for all your efforts, Ryan.
Thank you.
Okay, so that's great. Next item is an update from the Beach and Rec Department regarding the Surf Club Master Plan. So we've got Austin Hall, and then Chad from Kenton Frost is coming to just update us on where we are in the process. Got a lot of good feedback to the public information sessions. That is now closed, and they've kind of taken all that information and come up with some general concept, I guess, just summarizing some of the key takeaways from all that. So I'll turn it over to Austin and Chad.
Hey, Peggy. Happy to have Chad on board here to kind of go over the findings from the public information sessions. Had pretty significant turnout. We're very happy with the responses that we received. And Chad will talk about this, but we had over 100 people at the November 12th session and 50 plus on the December 11th session, with 97% survey responses just from the public information sessions. And then we had the survey online for people to fill out that was live through the 1st of February. And I believe it was 175 responses just from that. So a lot of great public input, and I'm looking forward to seeing what the online survey responses were. And I'll turn it over to Chad now to talk about the survey responses from the in-person sessions.
Thanks, Austin. Let me work on bringing up the files. I'll hide your agenda first since all right. Good evening, everyone. Chad Frost from Kent Frost Landscape Architecture. I'll try to run through this quick. I'm assuming most of you have seen both this version and probably probably not this version, sorry, not the executive summary, but the first public input packet from the in-person stuff. It's 50 pages long. That's summarizing about 800 pages worth of data that we got back from the public. So a lot of information, great turnout, as Austin was just mentioning. We did have over 100 people on the first, over 50 on the second, quite a few responses, almost 100 responses submitted back to us. Some people might not think that's a lot, but from what we're used to working across the state, that's a tremendous reply. We're used to, most of the time when we do a public input, before there's a plan for people to react to, we're lucky to get 20 or 30 people to show up. And, you guys were significantly over that. So there's a significant interest in the town, which is great. So to try to run through this quickly, we had a bunch of different parts of our input that we were looking for. The first was kind of the surf club history and what does the park mean to you? We heard loud and clear that surf club is like the gem of Madison. It is the heart and soul of Madison. It's a treasured asset that everybody really wants to protect, and that there's deep affection for it. And it really kind of defines what it is to live in Madison. And that just as we take a little bit of pieces out of there, the favorite part that we saw through this was the beach, and the least favorite part that we saw through that part of the survey were the bathrooms. Going into our pedestrian and vehicular circulation aspects, the largest issue that we saw was traffic, surf club congestion, mostly during major events. And there is a feeling that having just one entrance and one exit causes a lot of that issues. There was a feeling that the parking quantity is fairly adequate for the daily basis. It's a problem during those peak holidays, peak events. And there seemed to be a consensus to keep the lots fairly similar, that people didn't want to pave the entire paradise by any stretch, but to improve the organization, the circulation, the accessibility. That the feeling was that with the space we have, the area that is already parked, we could probably arrange it and organize it better to get what the needs are. We did get quite a few responses that people enjoy walking or riding their bike to the surf club, and that there was positive support for the addition of bike lanes or sidewalks from Route 1. More people would actually not take their cars to get back and forth to surf club. We did ask about trails, if there were, more trails, if that would be an asset or not. And what we received back from most people is that to maintain or improve the on-site walking trails was important to them, but to really keep the focus on the surf club and the beach amenities and environmental preservation. Jumping into the athletic facilities, this was where we saw some mixed results. It's probably is to be expected. A majority of Madison residents have been to an athletic event at the facility. Most people love, obviously, Strong Field and the amenities are there. There were some comments that some of the existing fields, primarily Exchange and Lowry, need some maintenance and or improvements. We got quite a few recommendations or requests, I should say, for new amenities, everything from restrooms and changing rooms to basketball courts, pickleball, extra lighting, cages, and things like that. And we will just say we put in there's basically mixed opinions, right? There's quite a few people. I think sports in Madison are pretty important. And so from that, let's say half of the population, we got a strong response that we need to keep all the fields and keep them at a high quality. From the half of the residents that might not be as involved in the athletic fields, we got an emphasis on the importance of preserving the natural waterfront site. Speaking of the waterfront, we were asking a bunch of questions about the waterfront, how we should protect it, and sea level rise. We were, I'll say, happy to report that the majority of the Madison residents strongly support proactive coastal improvements. So one of the questions was, should we do something now proactively? Should we wait, or should we not do anything? And by far, the support was for proactive coastal improvements, and that there was a great deal of enthusiasm about nature-based or living shorelines, sustainable shorelines and solutions, rather than traditional hard infrastructure. And then we were asking about how much beach loss or beach erosion would be acceptable over the next few years. 93% of the respondents said that losing 25% or more of the beach would be unacceptable. For the surf club building itself, we got pretty strong consensus that the building itself was regarded as in either fair or bad condition. Most participants have been to an event there. I think it was something like 72% of the people that had responded had been to an event, which is great. Not as many people obviously using it. The reasons for not using it or not having an event there were that the building was in poor condition, there are space limitations, outdated infrastructure, accessibility issues, and the feeling that there was a high cost of rental for the amount of space or the facility that you're actually getting was there. The majority of participants definitely thought that we should proactively elevate or move or relocate the building, but that there was a lot of concern about not to lose the coastal charm and the accessibility and the waterfront proximity. We heard from a lot of people about the love of how it is now, right? Everybody loves the building. They love the character and the charm of the place. They just would like it to be a new building with new amenities, but they don't want it to look fancy and shiny and out of place. And then we did hear that cost of renovation and or replacement was a large concern for many of the residents. Additional amenities, when we looked into it, the major things that people really wanted to have expanded or updated were bathrooms and changing rooms. Across the board, that was the thing we heard the most. We asked about amenities that are there currently that might be removed. And the two highest reports there were the skate park, as well as the maintenance buildings, maintenance area, that there's probably a better place in town for the maintenance buildings to be located, which we've talked about. And then the skate park, to me, it's a matter of, is this the right location within town? If it is, do we expand it? Is it the right location within the park? Because it's taking up a decent amount of space and does not appear to get that much use. Other additional amenities that we thought might be well received, we were surprised that they weren't. And so the majority of participants were against offering amenities like chairs, umbrellas, and kayaks for rent. We see that in a lot of communities where either the town does it or there's a agency that comes in and rents things like that. And that didn't go over very well, which we were kind of surprised about. Also, we put out there the idea of seasonal storage lockers so that there obviously isn't one for every family in town, but you'd have so many available and they would rotate on a seasonal basis, but they'd be large enough to put chairs and things like that in there that might encourage people to bike back and forth as opposed to needing a car. And also, surprisingly, that did not get too high of ratings. People just thought it was going to be potentially unsightly or take up too much space. I do think it's worth continuing talking about that as we go forward and as we develop some concepts, if they fit in there in a right way, to further explore that so the public has the opportunity to maybe fully understand that better before we reject it outright at the beginning. There was overwhelming support for the town of Madison to kind of actively pursue environmental improvements, prioritizing the health and sustainability of the environment. That was kind of repeated multiple times throughout. Don't just put in a whole bunch of things and overwhelm the environment. And then kind of general, we kind of at the end let people tell us what we might have forgotten or what additional comments they wanted to add. And what we found was that participants really do overwhelmingly value the surf club. They value it for its natural beauty, its simplicity, the waterfront location, the diverse recreational offerings that are there, the family-friendly atmosphere, and the fact that it really is a community-driven identity, right? It really is kind of that identity, that sense of place of Madison. The priority issues that we saw needed to be addressed are the outdated buildings, the circulation, insufficient amenities, and infrastructure that were within the park. And then you can see some of the list of things that people really wanted us to protect as we go through the process. And I will state, I should probably state at the beginning, um, none of this is let's say all that shocking. It's really reaffirming what we kind of thought going into talking through staff and after all the staff interviews, and even reading the RFP that you guys put out. A lot of this is really responding directly to what the expectations of the project are. This is just great that it's reaffirming what we believe the most important items are for within the project. I won't go through this whole thing. This is the full packet. I will stress it's just the from the in-person information. This is the one that right now is 50 pages long. This goes through all of the responses we've heard, summarizes things a little bit. This gives a little bit more background and kind of summarizes each response to each question. So if you want to go through that, it is available to see where all of that data came from that got to our executive summary. And then lastly, before I stop sharing, just to give you an idea of kind of where we are and where we're going within the overall project. This is the timeline that we had put out back in the fall when we first started. We've done the research and the information gathering. We've conducted the site analysis. Right now, we're in the middle of our public input, effectively on schedule, pretty close. And as Austin mentioned, we did leave the online version up through the month of January. That kind of stretched out our public input a little bit further, but we got so much feedback, both online and in person, that we felt it was worthwhile leaving it open for a little longer. And we're now right at that point of beginning the concept design period. So we're going to take all of this input, synthesize it down to basically what we've been talking about today, the key points that we want to be looking at. We now go through the next month or two, figuring out how we place all of those on the site through our concepts. We'll be coming back to you with those concepts in the next month and a half or so, reviewing multiple different concepts, taking that feedback, then going through design development in the spring, where we refine those concepts ideally into one concept, get more feedback. We take that out to the full public. We have some more public information sessions where people can react to all of that. We hear all of that information and we eventually synthesize it down into the master plan with another presentation, obviously back to you, as well as the boards and the public during the summer that's upcoming. So with that, that's kind of I'm trying to run through it pretty quickly. There's a ridiculous amount of information, but we're happy to see these kind of trends appearing that do support what we were kind of expecting at the beginning of the project. So happy to take any questions.
Were there any surprises? Anything that you weren't expecting or that the group wasn't expecting?
Well, like I said, I was a little surprised on the rental thing. I really did think in a lot of beach communities, having the ability to have a little locker to keep your chair and your boogie board and your towel, like just some stuff, the stuff that takes up space. I would have thought that would have been better received, and it wasn't. Otherwise, I was surprised by the amount of public input. I just got to reinforce that, Madison is killing it as far as public input goes. Just very engaged, which is awesome. And we're happy to have it. And I just want to reinforce that to everybody, from a board perspective, just because you're probably at least triple what we'd expect normal from an input at this point in the game.
Well, I want to say thank you, first of all. That was a very concise, trying to, pull together a lot of different feedback from different people. I think it just reemphasizes, like you said, some of the hunches that we had anyway, but now you can see it in black and white and people's feedback. It doesn't, solve any problems yet, right? So that's going to be the big conundrum is how do we address a lot of this and make it something that's practical and affordable, right? And I think once again, this is a planning process. So what will come out of this will be like a vision, and then the town would have to decide, how would we phase something in? Would we do it all as one big project? How does this rank towards other needs in town? So none of those conversations will be happening until we kind of zero in on what the vision is, right? So this will be, it's not like all of a sudden, and I just want to set expectations that in June we're going to come out with like a bonding referendum for the master plan, right? So, but I think it's great to start having that thinking come in place, and the timing works so much really well with the facilities committee reports that we're doing right now in terms of looking at the other town facilities and trying to like put this all together and make sure they complement each other and that it all kind of comes together for a long-term plan. So I think that's great. Any other board member questions, comments? No?
I would, that reminded me of one thing, Peggy, that athletics, we are in the process of doing an athletic field
Oh,
needs assessment
yeah.
and field evaluation town-wide at the same time that we're doing this. So we're obviously doing it for Surf Club, but then we're also doing a full assessment of each field in town that anybody uses for program recreation. And we're getting the attendance of every single activity that uses those fields for how many hours, how many kids are on the field, and all that. And we do a very detailed breakdown that eventually gives us how many hours are needed for field time of different fields within the town, and then how many field time, how many hours are available of those particular fields across the town. So that'll help us determine kind of athletic fields across the board, and then how that replies back into surf club itself. So if we have excess fields and we can get rid of a couple, that's great. Doesn't happen very often. Or if there's a need for more fields, then we can help identify where those might want to go as well.
Yeah, I think that is going to be a really helpful exercise because it does also marry up with the work that the facilities committee is doing at looking at town like open space and land, the town land its own, trying to make decisions about, the Ryerson property, the Jeffrey property. And so it'll be really interesting to see the feedback on that and kind of where we are. I do want to encourage the organizations in town to, partner with Austin on this. It's important that we get your feedback. If you're a member of an athletic group, I know that they've been reaching out trying to get this information from the different leagues. So I just encourage people to, provide as much information as possible because it's going to help shape some decisions as we go forward. Fields is a major investment that the town has, continues to make every year, and we just want to make we're doing it in a smart way, and managing those fields to the best of their ability, like most use, right? Optimal use, optimal maintenance, so that's going to be an important thing. What's your thought on timing for that? When do you think that you'll have that kind of assessment done?
We're working towards wrapping that up in the next 4 to 6 weeks if we can get all the feedback back in a timely fashion. We're trying to have that to be kind of uh, fit into the concept of design development portion of the surf club, right? So that if we find through that athletic fields needs, we really need a lot of fields and we need to upgrade exchange field to somehow be able to serve the public better and that meets a need, we want to be able to include that into this master plan. So we're trying to time that to dovetail in with this project.
Okay, great.
Just one thought to consider, because I know it sort of aligns quite nicely with our strategic plan, was sort of that north versus south, the kind of North Madison versus, below Route 1 type of thing. And, fields. So full disclosure, I was a Little League president for many moons. And, we used to hear a lot of commentary about the lack of fields up in North Madison, that everybody would have to come all the way down 79 and go to play and use the field. So maybe just another data point to put in your brain.
Excellent. Good. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fair point because do we also assess like travel time for residents, that kind of things. I don't know if that's part of the assessment, like what's the most accessible versus the most problematic in terms of, using fields.
We normally
Um,
don't map like time distance for travel, but we do map them on the town, right? So it
mhm,
becomes fairly obvious if you have a whole cluster in one spot and none in other places. But it's something that we also talked about for there's another municipality working for right now doing several fields, and we're intentionally clustering them all. They're kind of central-ish to the town as a whole. But from a maintenance perspective, it makes a lot of sense to have a cluster of fields where you can have all your equipment and your maintenance guys show up and they can kind of mow all day versus having to mow one field, get in the truck, drive across town, mow another field, get in the truck, drive across the other direction. So it's something that we can definitely talk about, right? As far as spreading them across town and making sure there's equal access. I think first and foremost is are there enough or not? And
mhm.
then if we need to spread them or move them and have that discussion about consolidation into one location or, distribute them across town. It's a great point to look at.
Okay, great. Um, well, I think we look forward to the next, and I think we talked about you'll come back with some like options to the board, right, for concepts.
Correct.
Um, that's going to be an important conversation, right? And that's when it gets really interesting. So,
Correct. Yeah.
and the
So the next
public
time,
will be paying attention. You think people are involved now? Just wait until we get a
well, that's when we're
Small
used to
little
concept.
seeing the
effort in
public.
town.
Yes.
Yeah, that's when we're used to. Once you put a picture on the wall, it's like, oh, why are you doing this? So that's what we're used to. So to get this
Yeah,
much feedback at this point means we'll have a whole lot of feedback, in the next couple of months.
yeah.
But yes, you're correct. So when we do the concepts, we'll be bringing them to the committee and then back to this whole board and let everybody to be able to receive input that way. We consider that also the public is also, encouraged to look and provide feedback through that. But we generally don't present multiple complete plans to the public to provide a selection just because it ends up being a 50-50 on the plan. And we also expect that it's never an A or a B, right? It's normally like I like this piece of this plan and this piece of this plan and this piece of this plan, and we mash it all together. So that's why it is obviously done in the public. So the public is more than welcome to come to the meetings and see those deliberations. But we will present to the public kind of once we've been able to distill that down a little bit from your input, from the board and rec, beach and rec committee input, as well as anybody else that comes in through the process.
And one other conversation that's come up even this cycle of our budget process has been synthetic fields versus grass fields. Is that something that you guys tend to chime in on as well?
Absolutely. Yep. The part of our fields assessment is looking at the condition of the field, of play. And if it's a natural grass field, how well is it maintained and what's playing surface like and how much use can it sustain, right? And we know that a synthetic turf field can sustain twice as much use as a natural grass field. Um, and eventually it costs less to maintain over time, even when you factor in the replacement most of the time. Um, but it's a decision that needs to be talked about. And so that's part of our assessment is if there's a need for more, it could be that you could, within the field you have, if you upgraded to a synthetic turf, that might meet the need. And then we can have the discussion about what the concerns may or may not be of going to a synthetic turf as well.
Yep. Thanks.
Yep. As well as infills and all the technical stuff. We can go down that rabbit hole too.
Oh, you'll hear
Okay.
about it.
Yeah.
Great, great. Well, thank you very much for the update. We look forward to continuing the conversations. It's this exciting thing. I know we've talked about it. I mean, for 6 years I've been wanting to get to this point, and you just kind of have to, work it through when people can focus on it. And this is a very important asset, as you know, for the town. So look forward to more discussion. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Um, Okay, great. So I think the next thing we have on the agenda is just a update on the snow removal budget. We're not going to be asking for any funds right now. You know, obviously we want to see how the year shakes out and if there's an opportunity to kind of fill the gap with other funding from other parts of the budget. But I did want to say that this is a oh, I'm just getting a note that my battery's running out, even though it's plugged in. I might be dropped off the call. Um, so but you know, this has been obviously a really tough year and in terms of snowstorms and on top of that, they've happened on weekends, so that gets more expensive because we have to pay people for holiday pay and weekend pay and you know, they've been quite significant storms that has required a lot of extra effort to get out there. And I just want to compliment once again the town. I think they've really gone the full mile. Our people have been very responsive and been out there and have sacrificed a lot of their evenings and weekends to respond to these storms that we've had. So I want to thank them for their service again and all the hard work they put into clearing the roads and the walkways and things like that. But I thought Sam, I think, is here, and you know, this has impacted a lot of different departments in town when we have to pull in a lot of resources to just keep things moving, so to speak. So I think Sam and Stacy, if you want to bring them up just to talk about where we are on some of the numbers, they're quite substantial. And I'm going to try to find a plug for I don't know what's going on with my laptop, so I might have to.
Over to you, Sam and Stacy.
I can give you the numbers and Sam can give you the details if you want.
May have lost Peggy, so.
So,
Oh,
yeah, basically it all started December 13th. That's first storm. And of course, all these have been coming on weekends, holidays. So there's been quite a few. Actually, we're going to get some more tonight and then maybe some more on Sunday. And I know as of yesterday, we were at 39,000 over. Right?
yes. Yep.
And that didn't include this past weekend's time for the guys. And then, of course, there's a salt shortage. So we just had to pay $50 more a ton for some salt because we needed to get the salt.
Wow.
So unfortunately, that cost us an extra $5,000 right there. Yeah, it's the toughest winter in a while. So it's probably been a few years since people saw all this snow. But
Sam, how's the staff holding up and how's the equipment holding up?
The equipment's doing pretty good. You know, we got our we got our last new truck just after that storm in December. So we only have one old truck on the road still, but the rest are all the newer Freightliners. So they're all doing pretty good. Beach and building and grounds, you know, trucks they're a little bit on the older side, but they're hanging in there. They had to make a few little repairs here and there in some of them, but they're pretty simple fixes and they're getting them right back on the road. So our downtime has been really low. So we don't have an incredible lot of downtime with the equipment.
Sam, could you just remind, maybe more for the public, but just the protocol for sidewalks? As I know on social media, there was a lot of chatter about you know, the sidewalks getting cleared, not getting cleared, et cetera. And you know, my understanding is most, if not all of them, are under the purview of the individual businesses.
Correct. The current ordinance is wherever the sidewalk is, if it's fronting your property, you're responsible for clearing it.
Some exceptions, I think, but
yeah, I mean, and I guess, you know, we could always look at revisiting the ordinance too. But right now, that's the way it is. And there is an ordinance about contractors and people pushing snow into the roads. They're not supposed to do that either. There's a lot of them pushing snow out of driveways into the road and then they're not cleaning it up. So, you know, we could always look at revisiting the ordinance. But right now, that's the way it is. And there is also an ordinance about contractors and people pushing snow into the roads. And not supposed to do that either. There's a lot of them pushing snow out of driveways into the road and then they're not cleaning it up. Um, so there's a lot of that, and then people leaving other items out on the road, garbage cans and so forth. Unfortunately, they get hit by the plows as they're going, and so there is some damage. Unfortunately, it can't be helped at times. The guy's not going to stop a plow truck to get out and move a garbage can. So
We're also dealing with limited visibility sometimes too, I would think.
yes, yeah.
Uh,
So the thing with overnight tonight is we might get a little bit of ice too. So fortunately, we were able to get a salt delivery today. In the last storm, we didn't have straight salt. We had to mix it with sand just to make it go further. So I know
And
there was,
that's a statewide issue. I think Sam mentioned
yeah,
that a lot of towns are struggling. So I'm glad we were able to get a shipment in because there's just been, I think, if you look back at the last couple of winters, you wouldn't have predicted the demand for salt, the level it is. And we always do our orders and everything, but whoever we get it from probably didn't take a lot of inventory this year, right? Thinking it was going to be needed. So, in Connecticut.
yeah, and we still have, I think, 450 tons on order from our normal supplier. They don't have it. So this other supplier we found, we just got 100 tons just to get us through the next couple of storms.
Sam, the one thing Scott mentioned, there is, there's also a difference between town roads and state roads, right?
Yep,
And then the town has, the school district actually hires outside contractors to do their parking lots, so that is not done by the town.
correct.
Um, and so I think, you know, sometimes when we hear complaints about things, it's kind of like, okay, well, first of all, who's responsible for the snow clearing? So we have to kind of go through that process of understanding it. And then typically, if there is an issue where it is a town responsibility, we do try to go back to the public work department. I think you guys have been really fast when there's been complaints. They might have missed a spot or missed a road or, and the other thing I want to just also mention is that, when you have wind involved, you can go through and plow something, but if the wind picks up, it could blow a lot of snow back into areas that have been plowed correctly. So, these are
Yeah, that's
live
exactly
weather
right.
events.
The last storm, we had a few areas where after they were all done plowing, the wind blew the snow back on the road. In some places, it blew a foot of snow back onto the road. I know that I heard there was some complaints on Facebook about it, but those were kind of isolated events. And then cul-de-sacs are another issue. So we need to really have those cleared. There's not a lot of spots to put the snow. In some of these places where underground utilities, sometimes their Comcast boxes might get hit with the snow piles. And I know we had one instance on Fence Creek where we had to go back and dig it out. And the guys have been responsive to complaints. They've been trying to get out there as quick as they can, but we only have nine guys on the road doing the plowing. So then plus the crew from building and grounds, it's another 7 or 8 guys. But there's 131 miles of road we have to do in the town.
Yeah, we have
So
a lot of
quite a bit.
roads, and I think I also think like when I know there was some concerns about how Route 1 was handled, by the state. A lot of our Route 1 is exposed. We don't have a lot of commercial development, so it's exposed to the weather more. We have open salt marshes. We're more exposed, I would say, to wind and things like that blowing. If you drive along Route 1 in Madison, a lot of it isn't commercialized, right? It's either smaller residential or it's open salt marsh on both ends of our town. So that does create a different dynamic in terms of keeping up with the road, the roadways and blowing snow and things like that. So, I think generally, the crews are out there, the state's out there, just as actively as we are, and everybody's trying to keep ahead of it. But it's Mother Nature, and and every storm is different, and I think they do the best job that they can.
Mhm. I think that's really good information though about the salt shortages because I think that hasn't really been heavily advertised in the media. I was out on Saturday from Madison to North Haven and up to Middletown on 80 and 79, and there was just snow all over the place. The roads were very manageable, but there was just snow. But so the lack of salt is an issue, like you said, experiencing the whole state. But then we also had those really cold temperatures. And my understanding is that road salt doesn't work as effectively when we get into those, negative 10 or more degrees, what we had been experiencing with the wind chills overnight. So, we were kind of battling the elements. We just had to battle the elements is what it was, and the crews are out there doing their work. So, kudos to them because we're inside warm and cozy and, they're out all night running around in the trucks. So,
Yeah, the temperatures for the last storm were pretty low. I mean, they're in the single
mhm.
digits. With the wind chill was definitely way below zero. Um, so I mean, they did the best job they could. Which,
I thought they did a great job. I mean, I thought
yeah,
both our town sides, both, the beach and rec side, buildings and grounds and public works did an awesome job. And I also think we owe a huge thanks to our state crew, out of the Guilford, I don't know what we call it, the Guilford site. I think they do a great job on Route 1 and 79 and 80 as well. I mean, I thought I traveled on all the roads and I thought they were very clear.
So I apologize because I was dealing with my power issue. Did you talk about the numbers though at the beginning, just in terms of where we were with the budget? Okay.
39K over.
And pardon?
39K over.
Is that including the school district numbers though? Or is that the town?
no, that's just ours. That's just the
That's just the town. So I think it just worth
Not current overtime either, Peggy, he's saying.
yeah.
no, not the last weekends.
Yeah, okay. And then the school district is seeing similar numbers. So just so you understand, it's kind of double whammy. So there's the town side, which is our public works and building and grounds, but then they have to obviously pay for their contractors as well to come in additional time. It's not I don't know how their contract is structured actually, if it's time and materials or if it's, it's not fixed price, I don't think. But so anyway, so just to be forewarned that that's going to be further
Yeah,
conversation in the spring.
I think
Um,
Peter. I think Peter paid said they have some type of arrangement where they pay by the inch.
They
So
do,
if it's
yeah.
over,
oh,
if it's
It's by
over a
the inch,
certain
I
amount,
think.
yeah.
and I think that, because I will say when I first started here, I was like, well, why is why aren't the town crews doing, the school district? And you know, I've heard from multiple people now, this is a far better way to structure it. And a lot of towns try to choose to do it this way because you have very different dynamics. The school district needs to, open up for school, which is a very different dynamic than what we're trying to do when we clear roads and things like that. So you have priorities that are different. And so you don't want to have to be prioritizing all that. You want one group focusing on their priority and then the town focusing on our priorities of getting things open and up and running and town hall cleared out and sidewalks cleared where we're responsible for them. So and then on top of that are the roads. So it's a lot during these storms to keep on top of. But I mean, we were due for a winter like this, right? Soon as we reduced the snow budget about 2 years ago, and we knew we were going to be due for a winter that was going to be kind of an old school real winter, like, and so that's what we're seeing now. Hopefully, it's not going to be a repeating thing, but hopefully, we'll be able to move on because we're just in February now, the beginning of February. So one of the other if we're good talking about the budget, just the other thing I wanted to talk about because I've had on and off again the last couple of years is the uh the mailbox replacement policy. The town has had a mailbox replacement policy in for a while. It's been probably, we're guessing, at least 15, maybe 20 years, where if it is an actual plow truck hitting the mailbox, not just snow that knocks it over, but there's an actual truck hitting it, we will replace it or we will reimburse you up to $80 for that. And that number has not changed for a long time. And I do think it's worth talking about that, that because that means the homeowner is out of pocket a lot of money when they're doing this, when it's something that is really, um, not their responsibility. So, Sam, I know, our policy, I don't know if you had some thoughts. I think you looked into what it would actually cost today in today's dollar versus 15 years ago to replace a mailbox and a post. You had done some research, if I recall.
Well, it all depends on if you have a contractor do it or if we do it. So I think the post in the mailbox is probably around $60. And if we have our crew go out and do it, it's costing the town $60. If you hire a contractor to do it, it's probably another $100, to have them go put it in. I don't know what people are charging these days. So it would cost, if someone had to do it on their own, it would probably cost them, 140, $150 to replace the mailbox.
And I know, Jeannie, I think you had done some research on what you saw other towns were providing for the reimbursement for these things.
Yes, it was around $80,
80?
but they also don't install them. They just reimburse for the 4x4 post and a generic mailbox.
Right. And so that's kind of like what the norm is. I mean, I feel like it gets complicated if we're going and doing installation. I feel like maybe just upping the allotment we would give to anybody, and then they can choose how they want to do it. They want to do it themselves. They want to hire somebody. Because then it's getting into a whole, uh, other kind of, thing that we're doing, right? Or we're going and installing mailboxes. I don't know. Has the town done that before where we actually installed it? I always thought it was just you got to check for $80 and that was kind of it.
So I don't know, they put up probably about a dozen of them so far.
Oh, they have?
Yep.
They're actually installing the mailboxes?
Yep. They've replaced them and went out and got them and replaced them and put them up. The thing to remember too is if they're going to do it on their own, the USPS has a diagram to install the post office boxes correctly, and they're supposed to be set back from the curb a certain distance and a certain height above the road. And a lot of times these are developed just so the plow doesn't hit them. So if they're too close to the road, sometimes, and that's why a lot of times the plow hits these mailboxes. Most of our plows have a cutout just so they don't hit the mailboxes. Our new plow recently that we just took delivery of didn't have that cutout, so we're going to try to modify the plow over the summertime so we don't have an issue next year. But most of our plows have a cutout so that they miss the mailboxes and they can get right up to next to the curb and push the snow off.
So, okay, because this is where I know we had chatted briefly about this, but I guess I didn't realize. So we are actually going and buying a mailbox and installing it for people, or are we giving them a check?
So I didn't witness them actually go out to the properties, but I know that they were putting mailboxes together on posts at the garage and they were going out. So I don't know if they just delivered them. I could check with Rob tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know if they just delivered them to the owners with the new posts and had them install them, but I kind of got the impression that they were putting them up.
Okay.
And in the past, we have just given a check.
That's what I remember I had one given to me about 15 years ago. So I didn't know they would come and install it.
I would think just as a homeowner, it's kind of like a personal thing too. Like I think I'd want to pick out my mailbox versus somebody slap one in for me. So for what it's worth.
So I guess the question is, do we want to continue to do the installations? And then if we were doing that, then I would think there wouldn't be, I guess we could offer that as an option, or you can get a check for $120 and then do what you want. I mean, is that, what's the board's thinking? Because I think right now it sounds like I thought it was just an $80 reimbursement. And that was it. And how many, just maybe to put in perspective, just quickly, do we know how many we've done this year? I can't remember.
I think we had about 20 complaints or more.
Yeah.
Let me
Okay.
check with Rob tomorrow about the installation. And just see
Okay.
if we didn't make sure we didn't just deliver them and say, here's your mailbox of post. But I know that they weren't getting them they were getting them a nice mailbox post, a T style mailbox post. It wasn't anything that was not just a 4x4.
Okay. So maybe to be continued, let's circle back when we have better, firmer information on all this. But I guess I'm wondering what is the inclination here? Just to do checked or to offer installation? What's the thought here? So we can just draft something up that's clear.
Going back 20 years or more, boards of selectmen were noted for their thriftiness. And when this was last debated, our predecessor boards decided that the cost of a basic mailbox and a basic post was what would be a proper thing for reimbursement. And so that goes back at least 20 years. I don't think we've talked about it since then. But at that time, certainly our predecessor boards of selectmen did not want to get involved in installation.
I mean, I personally think it's better not to do that because it gets into now an ongoing, you know, if something isn't installed the way the owner likes it, I could just see this kind of evolving into a recurring problem versus, coming up with just a fair number that we would provide residents. And then, like you said, Scott, some might prefer a very fancy mailbox that's $200 and other people are happy with the $30 plastic one, right? So,
Well, we
and it
had
keeps,
we had one individual say he spent $430 to replace his mailbox, and it got hit
yeah.
again.
So,
Actually, I mean, there are some, Sam. I mean, I had to go look for lampposts and similar as a mailbox, and they're like $650.
Mm.
They're crazy expensive now.
Yeah.
So,
With so many styles, that folks have to choose from, and then, so many folks with, say, electric fences or landscape lighting and that sort of thing. I think just providing them the funds to do it and steering clear of the installation. And then, they can pick what they want, they can put it where they want, and then I think that's the way to go.
so we'll come back with a more defined dollar amount, I guess, of what we think would be a fair upping from $80 to some number.
Hmm.
And then, but
What
also,
if we just
Sam,
made it $100 and just we're done with it?
a
Keep it
hundred.
easy.
I was going to recommend 120 based on what Sam was saying, but yeah, I'm happy to do that. If you guys don't need to weigh in anymore, we can do 120. We're just going to up it from 80 to 120 and update the policy. But the problem is, I'm like, how many people have you promised to install these mailboxes? So, um, you're muted.
I think they're pretty well caught up now. So
Okay. So this would be like going
going
forward.
forward,
Okay. So I guess then we need this was not a motion, so I would have to make a motion to, uh, I guess, revise the mailbox replacement policy to include a reimbursement of $120 for mailboxes that
So
are damaged
second
during
that.
storm events.
Second.
Okay. All right. Any conversation more about that? And then we'll write something up that's simple, but, okay. All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Okay.
okay, so it's $120, no installation.
Right.
Mhm.
Starting today.
Why don't we say this goes into, this would go into effect March 1st? Because you probably made promises, I think, through the end of February. Does that sound good? To be
Yeah.
implemented March 1st.
Sure.
So this storm, you can get a, but this is adequate notice now for people. Okay. All right, good. So I guess moving on to item number 12 is just any citizens' comments. Do we have any hands raised? Please raise your hand if you want to make a public comment.
No one's raising their hands.
No? Going once, going twice. With that, then I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Thanks, guys.
I see you.
All right, stay warm tonight.